Do not die in their war.
It wouldn't have been their war, it would have been our own. That's just the reality. When I say do not die in their war, it was a call to clarity. When politicians are fighting their pitched battles and you go and take side with one politician, you just die for nothing. That's their own war. But when you identify your own interests and you stand behind it and you are prepared to fight and die for it, I would applaud you. Those are worthy deaths.
You know, many Nigerians were ready to die in your war.
That was what I noticed, right? It restored hope for me. When I came out and I saw, in fact, whilst I was in prison, I was hearing the noise of the people outside.
They were ready to die in your war.
Why do you think I was snoring in prison? There was no need for me to fight again. People were fighting outside, so I could snore.
You see, if there is a book to read, I'm deliberately not talking about the details here. Go and download it, or you find a hard copy to read. Read, read, read. Reading is feeding the mind. Feeding the mind is feeding the brain. To feed the brain is to think. To think is to find the way. To find the way is redemption. But DeleFarotimi calls it revolution, the imperative of the Nigerian revolution. The Fulani hegemony, can it be linked to the ongoing banditry ravaging the country?
See, because of the rise of the Fulani hegemony, we could not build a rule-based society because that hegemony functions on multiple class systems.
But I thought that hegemony had been broken with the January coup.
No. When you think about it in those terms, you're then thinking about the hegemony in terms of personnel. It's not personnel.
So it's system.
It's the idea. Every system is predicated on ideas. All systems. If I wanted, okay, the person who built this microphone, for instance, wanted to build a microphone. So the idea of the microphone resulted in this. So it is the idea behind the design that informs the functionality of the design. Nigeria is designed to ensure that some people are above the law. That is what has led us into becoming a state governed by impunity. The Fulani hegemony is found on feudalism. Feudalism demands that some people must be above the law. So when you've now built a system that gives discretion to the law enforcer to keep some people above, you now create a system of justice that is able to see some people, but is blind to some people. And when you have that, you cannot have the rule of law. So whether these persons are in power or out of power is irrelevant. What has happened is that in recognition of the need to keep those people above the law, you've built a system that cannot be rule-based. It's that simple. So when you talk about the Fulani hegemony having been removed in January, let's just pretend that it was again reinstated in July and it remained in force, prosecuted the civil war and proceeded to restructure Nigeria. So the central idea behind the construction of the Nigerian state that emerged after the July 1966 coup is feudalism. The idea of feudalism governed the way Nigeria was structured. It became 12 from 4. Remember that to make it 4 regions, an entire process was initiated in 1961. You had an economic survey to determine the economic viability of what became the Midwestern region. You had a plebiscite to feel the pulse of the people who are going to be part of that region. A motion was taken in the Western Regional Assembly that passed by a 2/3 majority. Another motion was taken before the Federal House of Reps in Lagos. It passed by a 2/3 majority again. And then it was gazetted and the Midwestern region was created in 1962. 1963 Republican Constitution came out and duly gazetted everything. By the time Nigeria became a state, a country of 12 states and moved completely from federalism to unitary system, it became 12. Who was consulted? What process was initiated? A group of military bandits, some of them not even as old as 35. Gowon himself must have been around 32 or so, 32, 33. Those were the persons who sat down and turned Nigeria into 12.
They had advisors. They were super permanent secretaries.
Advisors. Are we talking about the same kind of people who are busy looting Nigeria dry today, and they arrogated to themselves the wisdom to decide how many regions Nigeria should have? I just explained to you the kind of process that led to the formation of the Midwestern region, the rigorous process. Economic viability was conducted. The affected persons voted in a plebiscite. A motion was taken and passed by 2/3 majority. Western Regional Assembly, Federal House of Representatives, and then a bunch of thieves. And I can say that with the benefit of history, because most of the persons who took these decisions have been variously exposed as thieves, common thieves. Those were the people who sat down and determined the trajectory of Nigeria, and from four regions, me and you are now in a 36-state federation where everybody has to go to Abuja cap in hand before they do anything. That's where we are.
Look at what you said here in your book. You said Nigeria was founded on indigenship, and Nigerians have never been citizens.
Yeah.
In the true sense of the word.
It's just the truth.
You also said that the dream of the Fulani people is to find a homeland in Nigeria. Is that why there is banditry?
What you call banditry is terrorism. And we should just stop using these words that minimize the crime. Who is a bandit? Because I think the only synonym you have for banditry will be armed robbery. Abi? But these ones, they are kidnapping men and women and children, enslaving them. They are taking ransom. They are appearing on TikTok. They are actually, I think it was, there was one ACP, Usman Daji or something like that in Katsina. Keremi killed Usman Daji, took his uniform, and then when they called the peace parley, the bandits, terrorists told the Katsina state government, don't bring any policeman to this meeting. And then Keremi wore Daji's uniform. The Nigerian state is so useless that an assistant commissioner of police was murdered by terrorists, Fulani terrorists. And then the same uniform adorned the back of the terrorists who sat down in what they call the peace negotiation with the same government. It is the impunity that has been extended to the Fulani that has made it impossible to deal decisively with the madness that has overtaken us.
You want the Fulani to be dealt with?
Any criminal should be dealt with. His tribe, his ethnicity, his religion should not matter. When we say Fulani, we must always be careful that it's not about the ethnic nationality of the criminal. It is the criminal that we need to be dealing with. That the person happens to be Fulani should not prevent his prosecution. It should not mean that because this person is from one particular ethnicity, you close your eyes to his criminality.
You have accused Buhari of enabling them.
Of course he did. And I'm not the first to say so. Usman Bugaje, or what was his name? Was it Baraje or Bugaje? The one that was the national secretary when they started their APC. He came into the public space. He volunteered the information. He said very clearly on the record that they imported Fulani terrorists from different Sahelian countries. He named them. Commodore Laumi went into Channel's TV station, the morning show. He equally said very clearly that as far back as 2016, they had given the list of terrorist sponsors in Nigeria to Buhari, and he did nothing about it. Malami had names running into over 100 given to him by the Emirates, the UAE, of sponsors of terrorism in Nigeria. He did nothing about it. It was only late last year, that some militia men were seized in Kwara State who said that they got their arms from the National Security Advisor. They were carrying automatic weapons. They were Fulanis.
Not to be terrorists. The arms were to be used for vigilante purposes.
By who? How can Fulani come into Kwara State as vigilantes? What about the people there?
But Kwara State is also the home of Fulanis.
What about the others who are living there? How come the law enforcement agents were not even aware of them? The first they became aware of them was when they were apprehended. How? The Fulanis are the recurrent decimal in the insecurity that has overtaken our country. And then somebody who is a member of the same Fulani nation sits as the National Security Advisor of Nigeria and is harming a Fulani militia.
Or should we say that Tinubu armed Fulani militia?
The only name that was mentioned, at least in the public space, was the NSA.
To the president.
To the president.
Perhaps acting on behalf of the president.
You have to presume that the president is aware.
Is the NSA to the president?
So you have to presume that, but it doesn't make it right. How do you go about the business of handing automatic weapons to an ethnic militia that is already publicly complicit to the knowledge of all and sundry in the insecurity?
But Niger Delta militants have automatic weapons.
And how has that worked for all of us?
So it's not just about the Fulani.
No, how has that worked for us?
Even in the southeast, you have boys with automatic weapons.
What has happened is that Nigeria has licensed madness in pursuit of impunity. We point to the Fulanis, but it's not an exception. It's the same all over.
Are we at war?
Functionally, yeah. I came to Ibadan this morning quite apprehensive about the security situation I'll find on the road, and I'll be heading back to Lagos with the same level of apprehension.
What can Tinubu do?
Why is he in the office if he can't do anything? Yorubas will say, what's the point of naming you as the hawk when you can't even catch ordinary chick?
What can he do?
As the president, he's the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. All he has to do is find the will to do the right thing. A ragtag army of bandits and terrorists have overtaken a country, the same country that went to Liberia, the same country that restored peace in Sierra Leone, the same country that was busy dropping munitions in Benin, cannot face a ragtag army of Fulani bandits and terrorists. That is not incapacity, that is collusion.
Chapter 1 of the book Imperatives of the Nigerian Revolution is change, not violence, the need to educate. Chapter 2, the fallacy of the inevitability of a Nigerian revolution. Chapter 3 is the politics of fractionalization. And if you read chapter 4, you will read the story of the birth of the Fulani hegemony. Chapter 5 is as interesting as other chapters. It is entitled A Foundation of Lies. What about chapter 6? Sustaining the hegemony. Who is sustaining the hegemony?
We all are. With the lies we tell ourselves, the constant refusal to confront the truth. We're sustaining it.